Well, welcome today to the Jansen Journal In Depth, and today my guest is Bob Emerson. He is the State Budget Director and a former colleague of mine when I was in the House of Representatives. I never served with you in the Senate, but you were in the Senate for quite a long time, and so first of all, I want to thank you for coming today because you have a busy job and you work for the governor, and there's plenty to do nowadays, so I appreciate your time today. But maybe for my guests, you could just talk a little bit about your background, what got you to be the state budget director, or kind of maybe the path you took to get here.
I don't know that there's a natural path to the budget director office. I mean, there have been a number of budget directors, and I'm probably, as I look around the country, about half of them come from a political background, and about half of them come from a technical background of doing budgets, some of them accountants and that sort of thing. But, I was a member of the House of Representatives for 18 years and 8 years in the Senate. And of those 26 years, I spent about 22 years on the Appropriations Committee. As you serve right now, you end up dealing with the budget day in and day out. And when you do that for 22 years, you get to know the budget and the budget process reasonably well. And clearly from a different perspective in the legislature than you get in the administration. But I spent most of my career dealing with the budget during my time in the legislature. So, prior to going to the legislature, I spent a number of years working for an international union, handling arbitration cases, negotiating contracts, and doing that sort of thing. Okay. Started out when I moved to Flint working in a factory and worked on the line, and after 5 years of doing that decided that wasn't how I wanted to spend the rest of my life, and went to work for a hospital and then got involved with union work and somehow ended up in the legislature. It was never my dream job, but turned out to be my dream job. I enjoyed the 26 years I spent in the legislature.
All right, so 26 years of experience. Today we're going to be talking about the budget and the state and kind of the money cycle, if you will, or the budgeting process, and some of the things about the state and how we spend the money. I'm on appropriations. Often I get questions about appropriations. So I thought this would be a good chance to share with some of my constituents a little bit more about this budget process. So what are some of the responsibilities for the state budget director?
Well, I mean, our primary responsibility of the state budget office and mine as director are to manage the $42 billion that you appropriate, the vast majority of that being restricted funds and federal funds. We spend more time, the legislature and the executive branch, trying to argue or debate the discretionary spending that's in the budget, and we have this year about $9.7 billion of discretionary spending, but the bulk of that $42 billion are restricted funds, and our job is to work with the legislature to ensure that appropriations take place that help us manage the laws that the legislature has set out, manage the bureaucracy that's established to carry out the laws that have been established by previous legislatures and the governor, and ensure that all departments try to live within those budgets, notify the legislature when there are problems, try to figure out how to address those problems, either through reducing appropriations or finding additional money to transfer from one department to another. But much of the job of the budget director is trying to ensure that we get a budget passed. This year was much better than last year, and I apologize to all your constituents for my rookie inexperience, and we'll accept some of the credit or blame for that. But I think our primary responsibility is to ensure that the taxpayers' dollars are spent the way the legislature, who is here to represent the taxpayers, that we make sure that those taxpayer dollars are spent the way the representatives of the people have told us how to spend them.
Good. Quick kind of thought about this, the budget. I think lots of folks might believe the budget, the way the state budgets, it might budget for a 5-year period or a 2-year period, but really it's every year there is a process, and that process, since I've always been on appropriations, is kind of a continual process. But a lot of folks probably find that hard to believe maybe, but what's the process when it comes to a budget? We're just, we have a cycle that goes from October 1st to September 30. That's our budget cycle. We just finished up a budget year, and now the next budget already happened, but there's a history to that. You and I know it, but when you think of that process, maybe you can help describe that process to the listeners today.
Yeah, it's probably helpful to know that traditionally the legislature will finish dealing with the upcoming fiscal year, which starts October 1st. They finish dealing with that budget on July 1st. And the time between July 1st and January 1st, we spend trying to ensure that the previous fiscal year's money is spent exactly the way the legislature intended it to be spent, and making sure that all of our departments live within those budgets, and try to monitor revenues at the same time. But for us, it's sort of a constant process, and when you're done with one budget, you begin planning for the next one. And normally around September, even before the fiscal year budget starts, we begin planning with the departments what the subsequent fiscal year budget will be. So our planning process starts in September, where we ask the departments to come back and tell us how they feel this year's budget works in implementing all of the laws that pertain to that department, and how we manage those programs, what kind of increases they anticipate over the next year, whether or not there were pay increases negotiated for state employees, whether or not there are benefit increases. Much of that planning takes place for us between September and January. January, we try to start putting together a budget to present to the legislature. The Constitution requires us to present that within 30 days from when the legislature convenes. Legislature normally convenes the second Wednesday in January. And so normally in the first or second week of February, the governor has to present her budget to the legislature. And so the planning for the budget that starts in October starts the previous September. Our planning process goes through January to February. We try to make sure that we are putting together that budget for the upcoming fiscal year based on revenues that are provided, estimates that are provided to us by the House and Senate Fiscal Agency and Treasury. But we present that budget in February. The legislature normally, and you know this process very well, the legislature then, half of the bills start in the House, half of the bills start in the Senate, and each House holds hearings and determines what each of those budget bills ought to contain, and what priorities you have and other members of the legislature have. And we try to, by April, try to have each House finish their deliberations with the half of the bills that they have. They normally pass those. They're required to go through subcommittees and full committee, and then the full House or Senate. And then the legislature switches bills, and the Senate considers the ones the House considered first, and the House